important.
Which publication is that?
Today, this week's Independent. This
Oh.
week's Independent.
Do you know who might do a feature? They're in a little publication, I think, once a month, is Gateway.
That's right. Yeah, this is.
It's interested in stories.
Yes, absolutely. I'm supposed to write one, as it now comes to me.
Write an expose like Father Greeley, and it'll be a bestseller.
Okay, so. Hello. Hello. We are we're the St. Francis Xavier group. We're trying to save St. Francis Xavier School, and we appreciate your being with us today. We have an interesting program. We're going to focus in on the impact of, say, any given neighborhood project. In the case of St. Francis Xavier School, it's a large school with a lot of potential. I'm going to let my fellow panelists introduce themselves. I'm Tom Moylan. I'm a retired physician, and we have developed this long-term interest in that our schools and be put to use at the St. Francis Xavier campus. I'll pass it on to my right is Gloria Rourke. Gloria?
Good evening. My name's Gloria Bernardini Rourke, and I'm a retired businesswoman. I'm a homemaker, and I raised 2 children and put them through the Catholic schools here in Missoula.
Thank you, Gloria, very much. And I'm going to turn it over now to James Weir. James's daytime job is the AFL-CIO job retraining and recruiting person. But James, you could introduce yourself. Thank you.
Yeah, good evening. My name's James Weir. Sorry about that. As Tom said, I'm employed as a coordinator of a federally funded program called Project Challenge Work Again, which helps dislocated workers get back into the workforce either by retraining or relocation, and we can help them. So if you've been laid off from your job, come down and see us. We're at 208 East Main. But do not park. Oh, I better not say that, I guess.
Just what James is trying to say is just park in the legal places. Be warned. But so with this group and we're very interested in these buildings, which have been a very vibrant part of our community and which have served essentially as a community center. The history is that we had a Catholic school in those buildings, in St. Francis Xavier School and in the Loyola School building, with the one with the white columns facing Pine Street. The St. Francis Xavier School building, of course, faces Spruce and at Orange, and you'll be seeing some footage of that later, so you can get an appreciation of the building. And all you'll get some appreciation of the building. It's got a large gym, a large auditorium, and has been a big part of our community in the past. And then when the Catholic schools did vacate so that St. Pat's would have a place during their building construction phase, which was for several years, the buildings have been since more recently, again, vacant more recently, but they are good buildings. I was just talking to the people here at City Hall. We have solid buildings. We could walk in and use them tomorrow. And that's important because, regardless of anything that might be going around out there or about the buildings. They are good, solid buildings and can be put to use immediately. And I'm going to watch my co-discussers here for their ideas or for anytime they want to break in. I didn't mean to just, as the British say, natter away here.
Well, I think what we're really all about is we want to preserve the building for its historic value. And it's not just for its historic value, because it does have a very vital role to play in the community. It's there. It's a good building, and it's available for use either by the Catholic schools if they want to come back in and use it, and if not, then let's try and get another use for it with some helping agencies and some other uses into that building to build up the downtown and make it vibrant and get people back into the area. You know, it's worth preserving. It's part of our heritage.
It is, and it affects all of Montana. And since the whole block has been nominated for the National Historic Register, it's part of our early history out here with the Jesuits. It's all tied in. But the important thing is these buildings are paid for. And it's if you don't like the antiquities and you prefer contemporary architecture, I guess then you'd want to see the buildings removed. But these are part of our legacy that was handed down to us. They are attractive, and they can be made more attractive. They definitely are structurally solid, but with some modernization and some gardening around there, it could just be a showplace here. And everybody knows the Catholic block in Missoula, and it just comes to you as you get off of I-90. It's a nice tourist attraction, so I would hope that we would not only for history's sake, but to capitalize on it for income, for the future.
That's a very important point, that our town is made up of many interesting older buildings, and if we tear them down, we lose that kind of a cachet or that kind of interesting ambiance that goes with our community. And so we're not tearing them down in reality. We have marvelous buildings, many of them much older than these buildings at St. Francis Xavier, that are part of the fabric of our community, and we are maintaining them throughout our community and on our university campus. So it's our hope to continue that heritage. And in speaking of that, there is we have a heritage commission, or a preservation commission, Missoula Preservation Commission, and they've had a special project recently in which they are working to bring back those two blocks of paving that are paved with paving bricks. Much of Missoula was paved with paving bricks at one time, and that two-block stretch over by Railroad Avenue is what remains of that era. And so in deference to that era, and we are going to be showing you during this program what that project is like, what it takes to repair a brick street, and they are actually doing that very project. And so that said, we'll be right back with you, but just for a short break, we'll let you see some of that project and the tape that was made that day of the work they were doing. So we'll be right back. Stay with us, please. So there we are. And there you go.
Kind of a ringing.
I wonder if I'm too close.
Usually it happens when there's too many mics on.
Yeah.
Oh.
So here's the way you might be okay, but we might have to just have you turn them on or off.
You have acoustic feedback, yeah?
Yeah, it's some kind of a loop feedback, I guess.
But can you hear it too when you're in there?
I think a little bit, yeah. Maybe I'm too close.
If you hear it, Yeah, you could back up a little bit.
Okay, I think that,
If you still hear it, then maybe just turn on and off as you go along.
okay,
And if one is still doing it, then it's something I can't control.
okay. This could be one of these three. Let us know the next break, you know, whether there's a chance. We'll just, if you're still having a problem, but I'll stop being so close.
I can't
I
hear
can-
it.
Okay.
Mine's on.
And you're on. Okay. Well, we're back, folks, and I think you got some idea of that wonderful project. It was a community coming together, chipping the old mortar off those bricks and recycling them. It takes me back to my youth when we repaired brick streets in Omaha that way. We'd make about maybe 5 feet of progress on Cummings Street, lay the bricks, and then the next day come back and do 5 more feet. And so it was a summer job, but you don't forget those skills.
Yeah, I was just going to say that while you were talking there about tourism and the economic impact of the buildings, I just thought of the modern parlance. It's kind of like eye candy, as they say, for tourists to come and see all the different kinds of textures in the buildings, the colors, the styles, and even to have a paved roadway. You know, you don't see those very often. And to come and actually see one which was made and repaired and is still here, it's amazing, because most of them were tarmacked over or blacktopped. And this one is there. You can see it. You can walk on it. And it was really handy, too, for, I suppose many people will know this, but bricks, roads were not just only durable, they were practical for horses, because horses had cleats on the back of their shoes to give them traction. And when you had a horse pull or move on a brick road, they could have traction on it. And they could pull loads and stop and move and stuff. And that's one of the reasons why they had.
In other words, their shoes,
Yeah.
they were able to catch a hold of those edges?
Mhm.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, you put a horse on a smooth surface, it's not a good idea.
It's in trouble. It's in trouble.
Yes. So it's just a fact that I learned, when I was growing up in Britain. So.
Yeah, well, that's...
Something else I'd like to say, I went on some of the historic walking tours last summer or spring, and the Historic Register is now giving awards to people who have homes that are at least 50 years old, and if people have maintained them and updated them and so forth and modernized them, but yet kept the same original concept of the home, but did a lot of upgrading and maintaining, they would get a designation from the Historic Register. And our buildings are older than 50 years old. They're 75, aren't they, Tom?
This St. Francis School is 75, and then the other buildings by kind of increments are 10 or 20 years are that much older. For instance, the Loyola building is about 10, 15 years older than the St. Francis building, and the rectory is another 10, 15 years, and then the church itself is 1892.
So we have a valuable piece of real estate here with valuable buildings and history, something for the whole state of Montana to be very proud of, and we need to keep it that way. And if I recall, once looking up on the website of the Chamber of Commerce, they had a picture of St. Francis right on the main page. So we are important, and we don't want to lose that importance or that presence.
It's the truth. It's history, and it is true that the Jesuit fathers were instrumental, and I say, and I'll go into that, but they were instrumental in bringing Christianity in the form of Catholicism to this state. And in other words, Christianity wasn't here before, and I'm going to modify that by saying, in point of fact, Iroquois Indians came here very early, before the Jesuit fathers, and told the Salish people about the black robes. They told them about the faith, about the Christian faith, and they'd come with the Hudson Bay Company in search of furs and decided to stay on. And Ignace Lamousse was a big player in that, and so, and then he lost his life on the second trip. They made 4 trips to St. Louis asking the Jesuit fathers to come here. And the intrepid Father De Smet, a very famous explorer of the Mississippi and Missouri regions, did come here in around 1840, a little right around 1840, 41. And that was the beginnings of the black robes here. And that's quite a story of its own right. I refer you to, we've done 3 videos on that subject with characters like Father Ravalli of Ravalli County fame, and Father Nicholas Point that used to hunt with the Indians, and just many, and the story of those cultural, you might say, you know, of the Native American culture, getting to know the culture of the black robes, as it were, who were mostly all from Italy. Father De Smet was a Belgian. I'm elaborating on that a little because since our last program, Father Ravalli has been brought into the Montana Hall of Fame. So he, for the next 8 years, will have a special position in the state capitol and so forth, as I understand it. He's inducted along with people like Charlie Russell and Jeanette Rankin and people that are, you know, basically national and world famous Montanans.
He was quite remarkable. He was the first physician in Montana, had the first drive-up window for prescription or for medicine in Stevensville, made his own furniture, was an artist, was a good cook, and he ministered to the people probably by horseback and walking.
Yeah.
So he was quite remarkable, and he left his country and sacrificed a lot to come to this country to bring Christianity. And he, of course, was an adventurer, but that doesn't mean that you don't have a heart for your homeland. So that had to be a very hard thing for him to do, to leave all his family behind.
Yes, it was, and in fact, he was asked, why don't you go back and visit him? And he said, because the sacrifice would not then be complete, would it? You know, and so, you know, it was kind of a touching moment because he wept a little right at that time when he said that. You know, just realizing what he was saying. But that's what he did.
I think too, Tom, if viewers, people who are watching tonight, or anybody that they meet and have an interest to know more, we have a website, which is www.xavierfoundation.net, and you can contact us on that website by email if you want. We have a telephone number, 406-531-2394. And if you want to write to us by the really old-fashioned way, Xavier Foundation, P.O. Box 7631, Missoula 59807. And I'm sure that if people contacted us, if we would give them the information that we know. If we don't know, we'll try and find out, and then we'll point you in the right direction. So I think if you want to do some research and you get interested, just call us, contact us, and get in touch with us, and we'll try our best to give you the information.
Yeah, I agree. This is a whole movement. There's a lot of us. We're not all here tonight, but we try to, you know, just kind of keep people's, you know, thinking. An empty building is in a lot of danger, but a forgotten building is in even more danger, and we're aware of that, and we're just we're also aware that as it now stands, Missoula, our community and our state, and probably to some extent our nation, because you know we do have connections all over the country and even all over the world in regard to this school. And I will say that the support for this concept, for getting this back in use, for putting it to use to serve humanity as a community center, as an after-school programs, whatever it might be, you know, it's immense. The support is just immense.
I think too, Tom, that we're part of that national movement. There are two pushes now on Home and Garden TV. and I can't remember the other one right offhand. But there are national movements to preserve the history of America. And so we're not just trying to preserve something just solely for Missoula. This is part of the whole fabric of the nation, and the nation's heritage, and Montana is part of that our nation's heritage. And
Well,
there's a
yeah.
national movement.
Yeah, yeah, and our First Lady Laura Bush, in that one of those TV segments that was on Discovery, was it? Actually, asked us to, as Americans, to keep our fabric, don't lose touch with our heritage, and keep our buildings, keep them going, don't give up on them. And a good example these days is the Missoula Art Museum. It's being rehabilitated, and Tim Bernard may come in later with us, but Tim has always said that what we're working with here is, even if you have a solid shell of a building, you have a lot. You have a lot more than if it's just flat ground, and that you're a lot closer to accomplishing things. Well, some of these mission-related ideas that we've talked about, we've had them to the offices in Washington, D.C., of our congressmen and senators, and and even talked specifically to Denny Rehberg. And in those offices, they tell us, look, you guys are 85% of the way there. You have buildings. And interestingly, as Tim has said in the past, they are bought and paid for.
They are paid for, and they can be made more beautiful. But by neglect, they're starting to look very sad. And that's a poor reflection on us as owners, as a Catholic community. But this is what Catholics are known for, is to serve people, to always be willing to help. And since we've got this project, with buildings, all we need to do is the renovation, and then we can get busy rolling up our sleeves to do the work. And it would not cost that much money. What would cost a lot is to tear them down and rebuild another structure, and new buildings have a longevity of approximately 50 years. So it's a very disposable type of time in our history. The quality of materials is not the same as it used to be. A lot of construction is, the builders are not as good builders as they used to be as well. So it's really sheer foolishness not to take advantage of this, put our energies into more positive things in doing the work, and not neglecting these buildings right now.
Well, you've made that point, James, that this, I think you've called it 19th century masonry wood beam construction, is basically, it's in a style that goes back to the Romans, right?
Yeah, it's a traditional way of building. It's natural materials.
But the point being that we know that these buildings last.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's examples all over of buildings built this way that are good for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yeah. If they're kept up and they're not left to be neglected, and they're looked after, they'll last for 1,000 years. There's nothing to stop it.
But the contrast that Gloria's making is that brand new construction, it's kind of quickie. I've seen them where they've had them enclosed and stuff, and be putting on a brick veneer within 2 weeks or something.
Well, no, excuse me. You don't see this much in America, but in Britain and the continent, where land is at a premium and the population density is very high, they did in the late 1940s, 50s, 60s, they did build high-rise apartments because there was a tremendous housing shortage. It had been neglected. There hadn't been much investment in housing. And so what they did was they cleared a lot of the older houses out, and then they built these tower blocks. Now, about 10, 15 years ago, they brought along the demolition people and blew them down to the ground because they were almost uninhabitable. They had mold. The heating costs were so high. They were dangerous. Nobody liked to live in them. They were isolated. People were very isolated in the communities. You could live above and below somebody, and you would never know who the people were above you or who the people were below you. So they demolished them. They blew them down. And some of them were 30, 40 stories high, and they just came in and blew them down.
Yeah.
And now they've built houses in communities with small streets and squares and places that people can go, and people begin to know their neighbors. And the vandalism, the crime has all gone down. And so if you have a building which is being used, and I think if the school could be used 18, 20 hours a day, and possibly 7 days a week, you would see the incidence of crime and other kinds of antisocial behavior go down, because there's always people there, and people feel connected.
Yeah.
This is true, this is true.
And it's neat to be connected with, say, a campus there that goes back to the early days of our state and goes back to the early days of, and then by projection, goes back in some ways to Rome, to the European culture, because that's what Christianity is all about. It's kind of the part of the glue that has created Western civilization, created European and now American civilization as an offshoot. But that those I was going to say that with the buildings being actually rooted in the work of Father Ravalli, because he came to Hellgate, which is not far from our campus, but he came to Hellgate and built a small mission church. And that church is the direct forebear of this St. Francis complex. And so it's, I might mention there's a Jesuit project that ties in with some things that are happening on the north side. The north side they've already received a $100,000 grant from the Catholic bishops, the Catholic Campaign for Human Development. And now there's they won a contest grant. It's here in the independent newspaper, Northwest Area Foundation, been awarded a $100,000 Great Strides Award. And what the idea is that the North Side group is working on a meal program, a way of teaching culinary arts to young students so that they have jobs when they go out into the working world. And here's an article here that was from the last few days, New Orleans Cafe Serving Up Hope, and it's the story of Cafe Reconcile, which is down in New Orleans. And it was interestingly, I think the name was Father Thompson, and he's dead now. He was even ill of cancer when he started the movement going. But maybe that's why they listened to him, because he had an extra, sharpness to his voice or whatever. But they listened to him and got this training. And it's so through that, hundreds and hundreds of food workers have been trained in this Cafe Reconcile, and it's got this great menu where the prices are about $8, and people flock to this cafe. It's yes, the staff is in training, but later they're employed and employable by major restaurants, and it's just kind of neat. And it's a Jesuit project. So here we have the Jesuit fathers here. A lot of this is tied together. Not only the north side, but and it gets over into something called your nativity schools. And I'm not going to keep nattering on right now, but I'd like after the break, I'd like to let you all, you viewers, get a chance to see a little bit more about the Brick Street project. Just a couple minutes. We'll be right back. Please stay with us. Thank you. Well, folks, we're back, and isn't that interesting how that crew of historic-minded people and of people that aren't afraid to work gave up a day of their lives to demonstrate what could be done in bringing back brick streets. I still remember a wonderful cobblestone street in Alexandria, Virginia, and the musing that started me, because I knew that some of the early colonial fathers had walked those same streets in Alexandria, along our, right next to our nation's capital, right across the river, is it? Alexandria, Virginia. You got Washington, D.C., right, sitting side by side.
Yeah, working on those kinds of projects as a volunteer, it's amazing the people you meet. You never know who you're going to meet, from what background they come, and you learn skills, and you learn how the people who came before us faced a problem and solved it. And you're going back to help preserve what they built and what their vision was. And it's a marvelous experience going and volunteering and working on those, even just for a day. And it's amazing the companionship and who you get to know and how you get involved in the community. And it's amazing what happens, just a one-day volunteer.
It's well, that's a good observation, and it goes back to, I think, something we were told in Scripture, or something, that it's returned, what we do, it returns to us 100-fold. And, you don't expect it to be that immediate, but it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's partly just rolling up your sleeves and going out and just, and, example being Dragon's Hollow, that's been made on this program before, the Missoula Ice Rink that Tim Bernard spearheaded. So, those are amazing examples of...
And you don't have to have specific, highly technical skills, because the people who run the projects are used to working with volunteers, and they will give you a job that suits your age, abilities, interests, knowledge, skills, or whatever. And I mean, just sweeping, for example, in the video, just pouring Portland cement in the pave bricks. It doesn't take really a lot of intellectual effort, but it does take a lot of backbone,
Yeah.
But then sitting down and taking the mortar out of the bricks, well, that requires a little bit more motor dexterity.
Chipping, chipping.
And then laying the bricks, that's a much more technical skill. But you begin to see how they built it with the concrete layer and then the sand, then the bricks, and then they put cement in it, and then they left nature to do the rest of it. They just wet it and let it harden.
Wet it.
I mean, it was very efficient.
Well,
Very efficient,
we have unique buildings, and we have a lot of people who would volunteer, and people that don't even belong to the church. And I think it's also important to honor the memory of all the people that put the buildings up. There must have been a lot of sacrifice, a lot of tears, a lot of hopes and dreams, and we just cannot dismiss it very easily by disposing of these buildings. I think we just have to respect what we've inherited and improve on it, and do the best we can to move forward. But I think they would just be so beautiful with a little bit of imagination and modernization. And I, again, stress gardening around, because the whole block needs to have some work done with gardening. And we have a wonderful garden club here in Missoula, and master gardeners who could offer some advice, and definitely volunteers.
Yeah.
Well, I had earlier referred to the concept of the Nativity School. This is the book. It's called Blueprint for the Future. This is the book on which the Nativity Schools are modeled. And it's a wonderful story. It's the story of Father Jack Pogliazza. That it's the vision of one man, a Jesuit priest, who in New York City many years ago started a school. He noticed that the kids that were getting in trouble, they weren't dumb. In fact, it was the other way around. They were bored, and they were smart kids, but they were heading for trouble. And it was kind of like a boys' town, but it was a daycare, I mean, not daycare, but a daytime concept. They start early. They go till 5. They have a high faculty ratio to the students, and it's very intensive. I got to see his school in Baltimore, Maryland, by the way. These schools are now up to 53 or 54 total schools. And what gets interesting is that we have one up at Browning. That's on what's called the Miguel School model, because when the Christian Brothers do them, they follow the plan, and it's called the Miguel School up at Browning, and the Christian Brothers operate that. And they operate them for 6th, 7th, and 8th grades, middle school, and figuring that that's the time to get the kids off the street and help them to, kind of our school or the reform school type of concept. So this is his book. I received it, interestingly, when I received it in the mail, it was just a disc. And you take it down to Kinko's and they print it up and bind it, and for not a lot of money either. But so the plans exist, and the reason why it's important to go into this is because we have another nativity school that the Jesuit fathers operate, and it's the same Jesuit fathers that we have here at this parish, and they operate St. Andrew. In other words, what I mean is I guess it's called Northwest Province, headquartered in Portland, and it's called St. Andrew's, and there they educate even children from Africa that are Muslim kids, but they make no distinction. They just say, hey, we think our school is good for you if you want to come aboard and advance rapidly. The school I got to privileged to go to and see in Baltimore actually was teaching Latin to 7th graders, and quite effectively. They recited the Our Father in Latin for me, and it was impressive because and they were happy kids. They really were. Now their gym there was simply the building was built in kind of a courtyard system, and there was a small courtyard, and that was their whole gym. It was an outdoor single basket, and you know, kids love sports everywhere. We have in this school, we have an auditorium, we have a gymnasium. It's an ideal setup for something like the nativity schools. It's worth mentioning because the nativity school in Portland just received a grant that exceeds $1 million from a major granting agency. So yeah, it's kind of like the Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come, and we're confident of that. You know, our Savior told us, "Knock and it will be opened." You know, you are the light of the world, you are the salt of the earth, and so we're not afraid. We're ready to move.
I think too, going back to what Gloria was saying, is that if the Missoula Catholic schools do decide to come back into the buildings, I'm sure there's a lot of people, if they needed help, a lot of people would come in and volunteer to help them reestablish themselves in the building. I don't think that would be a problem. If, on the other hand, they don't, I think community-minded people would come along and help us if we put out an idea of who we were looking for, what was to be accomplished. People in Missoula have a myriad of skills, and if you appealed for help, they would be there. There's no question about it. This is a very civic-minded city.
People care about people. And another concept, too, is both my children attended the Mercy Center of Arts in Pennsylvania, and that was teaching children about music. For instance, like there was a grand staff painted on the floor, and they would take different positions as a whole note, a half note in Grace's house and Fred Cleff's house. And so they learned the theory of music and then art for young children. And they had piano recitals, and this is like 5-year-old children. And my own children participated in this, and it was wonderful because, you know, children can absorb so much early, but there's so many cultural things that we can approach. But I think something like that in one of those buildings would be excellent to offer the community. If I had my grandchildren here, I'd pay their way for that because it's that important. It's just going to enrich their lives and open doors and make them hungry to learn more about art and music. So we have so many options that we can use. I'd rather see us keep the buildings that are paid for and improve on them, and then put the money into exploring programs and reaching out to people. That is what Catholics were always known for, and we need to keep that.
Yeah, and our community is reaching
concept.
out to us in so many ways, and this is such a great community, and I think maybe it's time to go back for another segment about those brick streets, and just to get the feel of what those folks were doing on that project. But we'll be right back with you. Don't leave us, please. It's just a couple minutes of the Brick Street project. We're just using it as a model for what can be done on any community project. But we'll be right back, folks. Well, welcome back to our show, and we hope you enjoyed that segment on the Brick Street project. It is such a model for for community action, and what we were on this topic before the break of the the effect of that school in Pennsylvania for your kids, and Freddie Clef painted on the floor, and you know, those wonderful concepts. And you know, one of the people interested in utilizing our building is the Missoula Symphony Orchestra. They would dearly like to do symphony orchestra in the round for kids in that auditorium.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah, yeah, and so
Music appreciation is just wonderful for
and,
children.
and it's part of the symphony's outreach to our community, and you know, I know that that's so, and you know, we have been approached, and I think it's a dream that we could work on, you know, and that's just one small example. We're exceeding at this point 30 people or organizations that have approached us, not for a free ride, but to pay us rent, you know, to be in these buildings. And you know, the implications are tremendous because you know, churches always have a lot of expenses, and Catholic schools for that matter, and any way that you can get some help. I was just doing the math, and with say around 500 kids at $6,000 a kid in the Catholic schools, you're looking at a yearly expenditure of $3 million by Catholic and other parents whose kids use the St. Joseph Grade School or the Loyola High School, Loyola Sacred Heart High School. You're looking at $3 million expended annually, and any help, you know, is important.
Well, we owe it to the children. Give you two minutes. We owe it to the children to educate them and get them prepared for the world, to be contributors. And it is our duty. We just can't take this lightly. It's on our shoulders now, and eventually they'll be taking care of us, but it's our duty to do the very best we can so that this world will be a better place. And so it covers all facets of education, and we have a golden opportunity right here.
Yeah, well, I think we're all familiar with with the struggle. I'm certainly getting more familiar with it, you know, through my grandkids and stuff. The struggle that young parents have to be sure that their kids get good input and get a good opportunities, you know, and it's so crucial. And here's, I mean, I'm just going to say, parents need all the help they can get, and so I see that as an opportunity for not only for our church but for any church to jump in there and help parents, you know, you might say help their parents raise their kids. We all need help.
Well, it takes a village to raise a child, and it's true. I mean, you know, it's nice if there's both parents. Sometimes there are single-family homes, but regardless of how many parents are in the house, you still need other input. You still need other help and ideas, and you'll have a more rounded child the more help you get.
And one great hope is in, say, sports. For instance, we have a gym there, but we also have outside of the buildings, we have four baskets. We have 2 basketball courts with a high fence around them. So we have an outside basketball court. It's being used as a parking lot now, and no reason it couldn't be parking lot use in the future too. But maybe there could be some basketball court brought back there. It always gives me joy to go by the St. Joseph School, and there's a basketball court right there at the corner of Stevens Avenue and whatever, where the light is. And to see kids out, I mean, it's not always just little kids. I mean, it's college kids too, out playing ball.
Yeah.
Well, children are our hope. I mean, if we need to always take care of our children, and they are our hope. And I guess you judge a society by the way you treat your children and you treat your seniors. And we need to do a better job here of treating our children much better than
I think
what
we treat our seniors real well, frankly. But I think we better look at how we treat our kids. You know, a lot of times we're worried about a parking place for grandma, when in point of fact, we ought to be worried about a basketball court for the kid.
Yeah.
a place
you know,
for children to go and doing positive things.